Hi, welcome back. Just a little bit of a note here. Where the studio is, we're going to talk a little bit about the making of glass. The first glass in the colonies in that late first quarter of the 18th century was in Town in New Jersey. And it was sitting on the exact tract of land where my studio is right now. We're recording this plaster video. And it was Caspar Wister. He migrated from Germany and probably about a half mile away, his glass manufacturer, the first glass blowing manufacturer, which employed some 40 artisans brought over from Germany. The first flat glass for windows was produced here. And it is also known that in this area, on a few occasions, Caspar Wister would later buy a very prominent house in Philadelphia, was friends with Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin, the scientist, came down to Town, at least we know of on two occasions, to confer with Wister on scientific glassware. So that was made for Franklin here in Town. And we're sitting here on Alloways Lake, which you can see in the background. This area was prolific for great sand for glass, great hardwoods that could be used to fire the kilns up, and lastly the lake, which gave access, which was more of a stream at that point, to the Delaware River, and things could be uploaded to Newcastle, Old Newcastle, or into Philadelphia, or south if need be, past Cape May and up to New York City. So it gave raw materials. Caspar brought his artisans from Germany, and we have good transportation here. So anyway, just a tidbit of where the studio is. So let's get back to our plastering. We're talking about plastering holes in walls, okay? And whether it be for the professional plaster that you really can't get in these parts, or for the happy homeowner who wants to endeavor this himself. For small holes less than 4 inches in diameter that involve less than the brown and finish coats, a repair is made in two applications. First, a layer of a base coat plaster is troweled in place and scraped back below the level of the existing plaster. When the base coat has set but not dried, more plaster is applied to create a smooth, level surface. One coat plastering is not generally recommended by plasterers because it tends to produce concave surfaces that show up when the plaster work is painted. So you get a slight bit of shrinkage when you're trying to fill the whole hole all at one time. So you need a little bit of patience here by filling the hole with multiple coats. Then a one coat patch is appropriate if it's not total depth down to the lath. For larger holes, where all 3 coats of plaster are damaged or missing down to the wood lath, the plasters generally proceed along these lines. First, all the old plaster is cleaned out and any loose lath is renailed. Next, a wood or mist is sprayed on the old lath to keep it from twisting when the new wet plaster is applied, or better still, a bonding agent is used. Also, we don't want the water in the plaster to wick into the lath immediately without proper drying. To provide a more reliable keying and to strengthen the patch, expanded metal lath, which is of a diamond mesh design, will be attached to the wood lath with tie wires and nailed over the wood lath and lath nails. The plaster is then applied in 3 coats traditionally and over the metal lath, lapping each layer with new layer of plaster over the old plaster so that the old and the new are evenly joined and mated. This stepping is recommended to produce a strong, invisible patch. Also, if a patch is made in a plaster wall that is slightly wavy, the contour of the patch should be made to conform to the regularities of the existing work. As in many of the 18th century houses, the walls are wavy in these parts. A flat patch will stand out from the rest of the wall. Patching holes in ceilings. Hairline cracks and holes may be unsightly, but when portions of the ceiling come loose, a more serious problem exists. The keys holding the plaster to the ceiling have probably broken. First, the plaster around the loose plaster should be examined. Keys may have deteriorated because of a localized moisture problem, poor quality of mixing or poor quality of plaster, or structural or overloading, yet the surrounding system may not be intact. So this must be checked out. And if you don't know, you must call, again, a conservationist like myself or a restorer. If the areas surrounding the loose area are in generally reasonably good condition, the loose plaster may be reattached to the lath by using flathead wood screws, stainless steel, and plaster washers. To patch a hole in the ceiling plaster, metal lath is fastened to the wood lath, and then the hole is filled with successive layers of plaster, establishing new plaster keys, totally essential. If the back of the ceiling lath is accessible, pull up floorboards, i.e. in an attic. Usually after removing these floorboards, small areas or bowed out plaster can be pushed back against the lath. A padded piece of plywood and braces are used against the ceiling to secure the loose plaster. So just form a T with a piece of plywood and a 2x4s to get a nice flat surface. A fairly liquid plaster mix in this case is used with glue size retardant and is applied to the backs of the lath and worked in the voids between the faces of the lath and the back of the plaster. While the first layer is still damp, plaster soaked strips of jute scrim are laid across the backs of the lath and pressed firmly into the first layer as reinforcement. The original lath must be secured, otherwise the weight of the patching plaster may tend to loosen it, so be well aware of this. Loose, damaged plaster can also be rekeyed when the goal is to preserve decorative surfaces or wallpaper or for historical perspective. Large areas of ceilings and walls can be saved. This method requires assistance of a skilled conservator, generally speaking. It is not a repair technique used by most plasters. The conservator injects an acrylic adhesive moisture through holes drilled in the face of plaster or through the lath from behind or through the attic floor. When accessible, the loose plaster is held firm until plywood bracing is applied and the adhesive bonding mixture sets. When complete, gaps between the plaster and the lath are filled, and the loose plaster is secure. Replacing over the old ceiling. If a historic ceiling is too cracked to patch or is sagging, but not damaged from moisture, plasterers routinely keep the old ceiling and simply re-lath and plaster over it. This repair technique can be used if lowering the ceiling slightly does not affect the other ornamental features of the room or the dwelling in general. The existing ceiling with 1x3-inch wood furring strips, one to each joist, and fastened completely through the old lath and plaster using a screw gun and again stainless steel screws. Expanded metal lath or gypsum board lath is nailed over the furring strips. Finally, 2 or 3 coats are applied according to traditional methods. Replastering over the old ceiling saves time, creates much less dust in historical areas than demolition, and gives added fire protection, which is a key component for our lack of 18th century dwellings that we have here in the colonies. When damaged plaster cannot be repaired, replacement options. Partial or complete removal may be necessary if plaster is badly damaged, particularly if the damage was caused by long-term moisture problems. Workers undertaking demolition should always wear dust masks because the plaster dust that flies into the air may contain decades of coal soot, lead from lead-based paints that have been applied. Long-sleeve clothing and head and eye protection should also be worn. Asbestos used in mid-20th century as an insulating factor and fireproofing agent. Precautions should be made and should be taken. If